Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. Arthur Schopenhauer. Romantic idealism is one of the most seductive lies men tell themselves. Conditioned by fairy tales, films, and fantasies, many men fall into the trap of projecting their deepest desires onto women, crafting illusions of perfect love that reality can never satisfy. Schopenhauer warned against this distortion, revealing how desire deceives perception, turning people into objects of imagined fulfillment. But this isn't about blaming women. The real problem lies within the man who chooses to see not who she is, but who he wishes her to be. Every disappointment, every heartbreak stems from this self-inflicted blindness. Romantic idealism is not love. It is emotional self-deception. In this video, we'll dismantle the dangerous fantasy of romantic idealism. You'll learn how it distorts relationships, fuels emotional dependence, and ultimately robs men of clarity, dignity, and genuine connection. Schopenhauer's inconvenient observation will serve as our guide to piercing through this illusion. Subscribe if you're ready to trade fantasies for truth. Like and stay until the end to reclaim your power in love and life. Schopenhauer's philosophy strikes at the heart of one of the most cherished illusions men hold: romantic idealism. From childhood, men are conditioned to believe in the concept of the one, a perfect woman who will complete them, heal their wounds, and give their life meaning. This narrative, reinforced by culture, religion, and media, creates a powerful fantasy. But Schopenhauer warned that this is not love. It is self-deception born from the will's blind striving. Romantic idealism turns the woman into a screen onto which the man projects his deepest desires and insecurities. He is not in love with her reality. He is in love with his fantasy of who she might be. This projection sets the stage for inevitable disappointment because reality can never compete with an illusion. The danger of romantic idealism lies in its subtlety. Unlike overt neediness or explicit validation-seeking, it disguises itself as noble affection. The man believes he is being loyal, committed, even virtuous. But beneath this mask is a covert expectation that she will fulfill his unmet needs, validate his worth, and soothe his existential anxieties. Schopenhauer's concept of the veil of Maya, the illusion that conceals the harsh truths of existence, perfectly captures this dynamic. The man, blinded by idealism, fails to see the woman as a separate, imperfect human being. Instead, he engages with a fantasy, perpetuating a cycle of disillusionment and emotional dependence. This idealization distorts the man's behavior. He ignores red flags, tolerates disrespect, and sacrifices his boundaries, all in service of maintaining the fantasy. He fears losing her not for who she truly is, but for what she represents in his mind: salvation, completion, worthiness. Schopenhauer teaches that desire enslaves by creating attachment to illusions. The idealized woman becomes the embodiment of this attachment. The man becomes reactive, anxious, and emotionally volatile, living in constant fear of the fantasy shattering. This fear undermines his authenticity and erodes his masculine presence. Ironically, romantic idealism often leads to the very outcomes the man dreads. Women sense when they are being idealized rather than genuinely seen. This creates an unspoken pressure, a dynamic where the man's neediness suffocates organic connection. Schopenhauer's assertion that human desire is inherently self-defeating manifests here with brutal clarity. The more the man clings to his fantasy, the more reality pushes back, leading to conflict, disappointment, and emotional pain. The relationship, instead of being a source of joy, becomes a theater of unmet expectations. Furthermore, romantic idealism stunts personal growth. By externalizing fulfillment, the man avoids confronting his own emotional wounds. He places the burden of his happiness on the woman, making her responsible for feelings she did not create. Schopenhauer emphasized that suffering is inherent to life, but much of it is exacerbated by unrealistic expectations. The idealist man suffers not because of external circumstances, but because of his refusal to accept reality as it is. His suffering is self-inflicted, born from his attachment to illusions that were never grounded in truth. Breaking free from romantic idealism requires a brutal but liberating shift, accepting the imperfection of others and the incompleteness of oneself. Schopenhauer's path to detachment involves recognizing that no external object or person can resolve the internal conflicts of the will. For the man ensnared by idealism, this means dismantling the fantasy layer by layer, confronting the uncomfortable truths about his desires, and rebuilding his relationships on the foundation of reality. Love in its purest form is not the fulfillment of fantasy, but the acceptance of imperfection. Only when a man sees a woman as she is, not as he wishes her to be, can genuine connection flourish. Romantic idealism, as Schopenhauer understood, is not a random flaw in human relationships. It is a direct consequence of deeper psychological mechanisms that operate beneath conscious awareness. The first of these is projection. A man burdened by unaddressed emotional wounds, unresolved insecurities, and unmet childhood needs seeks external targets onto which he can project these internal voids. The idealized woman becomes the canvas for this projection. He doesn't see her for who she is. He sees her as the answer to questions he's too afraid to ask himself. Schopenhauer's teaching that desire distorts perception becomes painfully clear here. The stronger the desire, the less accurately we perceive reality. This projection is not harmless. It sets up the man for chronic dissatisfaction because no woman can sustain the unrealistic role he has assigned her. Every flaw she exhibits, every moment of emotional distance becomes a threat, not because it reflects on her character, but because it shatters his illusion of completion. This discrepancy between fantasy and reality creates cognitive dissonance, which the man attempts to resolve either by denial, she's just going through a phase, or by self-blame, I must not be enough to keep her ideal. Both responses deepen his emotional dependence. Another mechanism at play is the fear of insignificance. Many men, whether they admit it or not, struggle with existential fears of being irrelevant, unloved, or unworthy. Romantic idealism offers a seductive escape from these fears by providing a narrative where being loved by the one validates their existence. Schopenhauer, ever the realist, would argue that this is merely the will's clever trick to avoid confronting life's inherent suffering. By investing their worth into the fantasy of perfect love, men momentarily silence their deeper anxieties, only to find them roaring back louder when reality fails to conform. Social conditioning amplifies these psychological tendencies. From fairy tales to Hollywood films, the cultural script teaches men that romantic success equates to personal success. The hero's journey often culminates in winning the affection of the idealized woman, cementing the association between external validation and inner worth. Schopenhauer's critique of the herd mentality applies here. Most men unconsciously adopt these societal scripts without examining their validity, blindly perpetuating patterns that ensure their own dissatisfaction. Romantic idealism also thrives on the mechanism of emotional avoidance. Facing one's inner voids, feelings of inadequacy, loneliness, or purposelessness, is an uncomfortable task. Projecting these unresolved emotions onto a romantic ideal allows temporary relief. The man believes that if he can just secure her love, these feelings will disappear. Schopenhauer, however, teaches that suffering is not something to be outsourced or avoided through external attachments. It must be faced, understood, and transcended internally. Until a man embraces this philosophy, he remains trapped in a cycle of escapism through idealized relationships. Breaking this cycle requires developing emotional self-awareness. A man must learn to differentiate between genuine admiration for a woman and the projection of his unmet needs onto her. This level of introspection demands humility and philosophical rigor, the willingness to question one's own narratives and confront uncomfortable truths. Schopenhauer's approach is invaluable here. By constantly challenging the illusions of desire and examining the roots of suffering, a man gradually dismantles the psychological scaffolding that sustains romantic idealism. Ultimately, romantic idealism is not merely a relationship issue, It is a reflection of a man's relationship with himself. The woman in this dynamic is incidental. The real struggle lies within, the battle between the craving for external completion and the philosophical pursuit of inner wholeness. Schopenhauer's teachings offer a roadmap for this journey, guiding men away from the mirage of idealized love and toward the grounded reality of self-sufficient presence. Only by winning this internal battle can a man hope to build authentic, fulfilling relationships free from the chains of illusion. Romantic idealism, far from enhancing relationships, systematically destroys their authenticity. Schopenhauer's philosophy reveals why. When desire becomes an illusion of completion, the person you claim to love becomes secondary to the fantasy you've constructed around them. For men ensnared in this dynamic, every interaction with a woman is filtered through the lens of expectation. They do not see her quirks, her flaws, her individuality. Instead, they see how well or poorly she aligns with their projected ideal. This disconnect prevents real intimacy, because intimacy requires seeing, accepting, and engaging with another person as they are, not as you wish them to be. The idealized woman feels this gap. Even if she cannot articulate it, she senses the weight of invisible expectations. What might start as flattering attention quickly becomes suffocating, as the man's emotional stability hinges on her ability to sustain his fantasy. Schopenhauer teaches that this is the curse of desire. The more one demands from the object of desire, the more it eludes satisfaction. In relationships, this translates into a toxic dynamic, where the woman feels pressured to live up to an unattainable role, while the man spirals into disappointment when reality inevitably intrudes. This pattern leads to passive-aggressive behaviors. The idealist man, afraid of losing his fantasy, avoids direct confrontation, but internalizes resentment when his expectations are unmet. He becomes emotionally volatile, alternating between adoration and withdrawal, praise and subtle guilt-tripping. Schopenhauer's critique of human interactions highlights how such dynamics stem from a fundamental misunderstanding of self and other. When the relationship is built on projection, both parties are trapped in roles neither consciously chose, eroding trust and genuine connection. Romantic idealism also sabotages the man's ability to establish healthy boundaries. Desperate to maintain the illusion, he tolerates disrespect, excuses poor behavior, and sacrifices his own needs. This self-erasure is not nobility, it is a form of emotional self-harm. Schopenhauer's insistence on detachment becomes a necessary antidote. True detachment does not mean emotional coldness. It means releasing the compulsion to force reality to match one's desires. Only from this place of clarity can a man engage authentically, setting boundaries that preserve his dignity while fostering real connection. Another casualty of romantic idealism is emotional growth. Relationships are powerful mirrors for self-awareness, but only if approached with honesty. When a man clings to idealization, he shields himself from uncomfortable truths about his own insecurities and emotional immaturity. Every disappointment becomes her failure to meet his unrealistic standards, rather than an opportunity for self-reflection. Schopenhauer would argue that this is a refusal to confront life's inherent suffering. The man seeks to escape discomfort through fantasy, ensuring his perpetual dissatisfaction. To build authentic relationships, a man must dismantle his idealism layer by layer. This involves active self-inquiry. Am I loving her or am I loving the idea of her? What expectations am I silently imposing? Schopenhauer's method of piercing through the illusions of the will applies here. By stripping away projections, the man can meet his partner as she truly is, fostering a relationship grounded in mutual respect, honesty, and freedom. In this space, love becomes a choice, not a desperate grasp for completion. Ultimately, romantic idealism is a form of emotional escapism. It promises fulfillment but delivers disconnection. Schopenhauer's philosophy offers a path out. By accepting the imperfect nature of existence and relinquishing the fantasy of external completion, a man liberates himself. This liberation is not an end to relationships, but a beginning of real ones, connections where both individuals are seen, valued, and engaged with as they are, not as they are imagined to be. The antidote to romantic idealism is not emotional detachment, but presence. Schopenhauer's philosophy teaches that liberation comes not from the fulfillment of desire, but from the transcendence of its illusions. For the modern man trapped in idealized fantasies, the shift toward presence marks a profound transformation. Presence requires seeing reality without distortion, engaging with what is rather than what is wished for. In relationships, this means meeting a woman not as a savior, not as a fantasy figure, but as a human being with her own complexities, flaws, and individuality. This shift dismantles the dynamic of emotional dependence. When a man no longer seeks completion through a woman, he stops projecting impossible expectations onto her. His emotional stability becomes self-sourced, his interactions untainted by neediness. Schopenhauer's emphasis on detachment supports this. By releasing the compulsion to control outcomes, the man gains clarity and peace. This inner anchoring allows him to relate from a place of strength, where his worth is no longer up for negotiation. Presence also redefines attraction. Women are naturally drawn to men who are grounded, self-possessed, and authentic. The man, free from idealization, no longer needs to manipulate or perform to gain approval. His interactions are direct, honest, and free-flowing. Schopenhauer's critique of social pretenses aligns with this. By shedding the masks created by desire, a man reveals a more compelling, real version of himself. This authenticity creates deeper, more meaningful connections that far surpass the shallow thrills of idealized fantasies. Another critical aspect of this shift is the re-establishment of boundaries. Romantic idealism erodes a man's capacity to protect his self-respect because it convinces him that losing himself is the price of love. Presence corrects this distortion. A man anchored in reality recognizes that genuine love respects individuality and space. Schopenhauer's concept of the will's enslavement through blind craving finds its counterbalance in the man who no longer sacrifices his values for fleeting validation. His boundaries become expressions of self-respect, not barriers of fear. This transformation also influences a man's emotional resilience. The rejection or disapproval that once destabilized him loses its power. He understands that these reactions reflect more about the other person's reality than his own worth. Schopenhauer's philosophical detachment provides the mental framework for this perspective shift. The man becomes less reactive, more composed, and thus more attractive, not through indifference but through inner security. This resilience permeates not only romantic relationships, but every area of his life. Importantly, the shift from idealization to presence redefines what a man seeks in relationships. No longer desperate for completion, he looks for companionship, shared values, and mutual growth. This mature approach aligns with Schopenhauer's view of relationships as human interactions, not as vehicles for fantasy fulfillment. The man engages with curiosity and openness, fostering connections built on reality, not illusion. This paradigm shift elevates the quality of his relationships and enriches his life experience. Ultimately, this journey from idealization to presence is a rite of passage for any man seeking authentic masculinity. It is the transition from boyish fantasy to mature engagement with life. Schopenhauer's teachings, though often seen as harsh, offer a liberating perspective. By accepting the imperfection of reality, one gains freedom from the self-imposed suffering of illusions. In relationships, this acceptance translates into a profound, grounded love, one not tainted by need but enriched by genuine presence. Moving beyond romantic idealism is not about giving up on love. It's about building real connection grounded in authenticity and mutual respect. Schopenhauer's philosophy teaches that true freedom comes from shedding illusions, not relationships. For the man entangled in idealized fantasies, this means shifting from a mindset of emotional extraction to one of conscious contribution. Instead of seeking a woman to validate his worth, he approaches relationships as an opportunity to share his already established sense of self. This reversal of focus, from taking to giving, creates the foundation for genuine connection. One of the key benefits of this transformation is emotional clarity. Without the haze of projection, the man can engage with women as they are, not as symbols of his unfulfilled desires. He listens more attentively, communicates more honestly, and navigates conflicts with maturity. Schopenhauer's emphasis on facing reality without distortion becomes a guiding principle in these interactions. The relationship evolves from a fragile fantasy into a robust partnership, resilient to the inevitable challenges of life. This clarity also enhances the man's ability to select compatible partners. Free from the compulsive need to idealize, he evaluates potential relationships based on shared values, emotional maturity, and genuine compatibility. He is no longer swayed by superficial attributes or fleeting emotional highs. Schopenhauer's critique of the will's blind striving applies here. The man learns to distinguish between desire-driven infatuation and meaningful connection. This discernment protects him from cycles of disappointment and fosters deeper, more fulfilling relationships. Another profound shift is the restoration of emotional sovereignty. The man no longer allows a woman's attention, approval, or withdrawal to dictate his emotional state. His inner equilibrium becomes self-regulated, immune to the volatility of external validation. Schopenhauer's path of detachment supports this state of being, where the man remains centered regardless of external circumstances. This emotional stability not only benefits his relationships, but also enhances his overall quality of life. Furthermore, the man's social dynamics transform. By embodying authenticity, he attracts friendships and professional relationships that reflect his genuine self. The superficiality of approval-seeking fades, replaced by meaningful interactions built on respect and shared purpose. Schopenhauer's belief in the value of intellectual and moral independence finds practical expression here. The man's life becomes a reflection of his internal clarity, not a reaction to societal scripts or external expectations. This journey also cultivates a deeper sense of fulfillment. No longer chasing the mirage of perfect love, the man finds satisfaction in the richness of real human connection. He appreciates the imperfections, complexities, and growth opportunities that come with authentic relationships. Schopenhauer's realistic view of life's inherent suffering becomes less of a burden and more of a grounding force. By accepting life's imperfections, the man experiences relationships not as sources of salvation, but as enriching human experiences. Ultimately, transcending romantic idealism liberates the man to live, love, and lead from a place of genuine strength. Schopenhauer's teachings provide the philosophical backbone for this transformation, guiding him away from illusion and toward reality. In this grounded state, the man no longer seeks to be completed by another. Instead, he meets the world and the women in it with presence, respect, and self-sufficiency. This is the essence of true masculine power, not dominance, not validation, but quiet, unwavering authenticity. Romantic idealism is a beautiful lie, a seductive narrative that promises fulfillment through the perfect relationship, but inevitably delivers frustration, disillusionment, and quiet suffering. Schopenhauer, with his merciless clarity, dismantled this illusion by exposing the true nature of human desire: insatiable, self-centered, and inherently deceptive. For the man trapped in the fantasy of idealized love, every relationship becomes a battlefield of unmet expectations, where reality never quite lives up to the carefully constructed dream. But this is not a condemnation of love itself. Rather, it is a call to awaken from the trance of projection, to engage with women and with life as they are, not as we wish them to be. The man who transcends romantic idealism does not become cold or detached. He becomes present. He learns to love from abundance, not lack. His worth is no longer on lease, dependent on the fluctuating whims of external approval. Instead, it is rooted in self-awareness, emotional sovereignty, and the quiet power of authenticity. This transformation redefines his relationships, turning them from arenas of validation-seeking into spaces of mutual growth and genuine connection. Schopenhauer's teachings illuminate this path, not as a cynical retreat from love, but as a liberation from illusion. To see a woman as she truly is, without the fog of idealization, is to finally offer her the respect of reality. It is in this grounded state that real love, not fantasy, can flourish. The journey is not easy. It demands brutal self-honesty, the courage to dismantle long-held fantasies, and the discipline to rebuild one's emotional foundation on truth rather than wishful thinking. But the reward is profound: relationships that enrich rather than drain, a sense of self that is unshakable, and a life lived with clarity, presence, and inner peace. You no longer need to chase the mirage of the perfect woman to feel whole. You are already complete. Every step you take away from romantic idealism is a step toward authentic masculinity and emotional freedom. If this message resonated with you, if you're ready to leave behind the illusions and start building real, fulfilling relationships from a place of strength and clarity, subscribe to this channel now. Hit the like button to support this work, and share this video with a brother who might be trapped in the same fantasy. Together, we're not rejecting love, we're reclaiming its true form. No more fantasies, no more illusions, just truth, presence, and the quiet confidence of a man who no longer needs to be completed by anyone but himself.